under the waters above, under the heavenly throne of God. The flat earth gives you transcendence again. You know that you're loved by God again. And you have faith in yourself again, and you're no longer a scientism fanboy worshiping priests who are misleading you.
Could God only love me under a dome?
Into your own hands. What was that?
God only love me under a dome? Could he not love me in a large universe that he created for me to explore?
This was not the universe created by him. This was created
That wasn't
by
the question, Lemon.
The answer would be no then. Because God didn't.
So God is incapable of loving us unless he puts us in this particular environment you think we're in? That's a very weak God. That's an incredibly weak God, Lemon. How dare you limit God to something so awful?
But you're seeing through a glass darkly given to you by Greek philosophical sages that blocks your vision of God.
You just told me that your God is a monster because he can only love me in something he created.
But you're seeing through a distorted lens of Greek scientism.
Satan gave you the globe, so that God,
you've just given God a negative characteristic. How dare you, Lemon?
But you're seeing through a glass darkly. God loves you, yes, but you can't see him. You can't really see him through this globe.
Seeing him. I'm asking if he would be capable of loving me.
Not quite, Lemon. Unless he repents, God's going to destroy him. So he needs to repent and know Jesus.
Oh, Lemon better repent because he just gave a negative attribute to God, and God is going to kick his ass if he's not careful.
No, Lemon knows how to repent.
Love you, but you're going to be looking through a glass darkly.
You don't know how to repent in the right way. And that's going to be your problem.
And also, the earth is not.
I have to repent like you do. The amount of love.
He doesn't seem to be trying to repent. He doesn't seem to be trying to repent.
The tip of the earth is not a salvation issue. It's just one of the many tools by the enemy to hide our, Creator from us and lead us ever so slowly toward hell. It's just one tool among many.
Just like in the flood, where God destroyed many people because they tried to go their own way and they were mocking and laughing. God got rid of them, and then he said in the days of Noah will be the same. There's the same people like Brian who's mocking God will be destroyed. There'll be no love for you, Brian, at all. God won't be loving you at all. Right? Should be in the lake of fire.
Generation after generation of people have mocked God, and he has done shit about it.
Yes, they will get the lake of fire. That's right.
Also, Chemo, how did I mock God? Now, see, Lemon was the one who just gave him a negative attribute and said he was incapable of loving us.
He can love you, but there's going to be a glass darkly between you and God. You're not going to see him clearly because it's easier to see him with flat land covered by a dome than it is with a ball rocketing randomly.
Lemon, do you or do you not deny that God could not love me unless he was on the flat earth like you said he was?
No, I said repent.
In the context of the globe blocking you from seeing God and that getting in the way of seeing his glory fully.
Can we just pass the fucking
but Lemon, in all fairness,
get the fuck out of here.
Lemon, in all fairness, the shape of the earth is not salvation, is it? So that someone like Kent Hovind thinks it's a ball, but if his heart, what do you think, in the right place?
That's why God revealed the flat earth, because he's breaking down these strongholds of scientism, where man is erecting science and fallen men and their knowledge as gods instead of God. That's why we're getting the flat earth now.
Well, the earth ain't flat, so that's a problem for you and your God.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that, but again, it's because some people may have followed God before the flat earth came out, our grandparents or something, not known and thought it was a ball, but they still believed in their heart,
Yeah. With the heart, we believe. We can pay lip service to scientism, but inside we'll be like, it doesn't really make sense that they're saying it's a ball when it looks flat. But I'm going to go along with it for my job, for my career, so that I don't look kooky to my friends. But in my heart, I believe. I really believe the truth in my heart. That's where, man's beliefs come from. That's where, the truth really is. Inside of your heart, do you really believe that it's a ball? Do you really believe NASA?
Yeah, but Lemon's right in a way, because Brian, it's not like you don't know that it's flat. So now, today, it's flat. You cannot personally prove the globe yourself right now, here and now. You cannot show gravity right now, here and now. You cannot show any of these things right now. So you now are going with the deception. So Again, that's probably why you will end up in the lake of fire, unfortunately. Because you chose the other way. You've been revealed the truth, and you said, no, I'm not going to go with God's creation. I'm going to go with what?
I got a book for you. I'm gonna link in chat. Okay.
A book. Okay. But that's just the general idea. Yeah.
The lake of fire, like Mordor. There you go. I'll read it out loud to you if you'd like. I picked that up for my 1-year-old.
Newtonian Physics for Babies by Chris Ferry.
Ah, for babies, yes. Okay.
But anyway, God can love anybody, Mr. Peck. I was just saying that through the glass darkly, it's kind of hard to see evidence of his creation, harder to see evidence of his creation, flat covered by a dome versus like a ball.
What are we looking through? What, Lemon?
I think you're looking through a glass darkly.
Glass. I've heard that somewhere. Where have I heard that?
I think it's a mirror darkly. I think is the actual terminology from a movie. I think
we have this much view.
More recently.
With the flat land covered by a dome.
It seems I've heard that said like 8-10 times recently.
Let's go to Google and see the source of this quote. I believe it's the Bible. But let's go.
The source I'm referring to is in the BC. The person who's been saying it over and over and over again for no good reason, even.
Who's that? Who keeps saying looking through a glass darkly, I wonder?
Yeah, I wonder. So,
whoever it is sounds like a very wise person, a very wise soul.
A wise soul that can't triangle, can't circle, can't figure anything out.
A very wise soul, an old soul, if you will. Full of
everything you're saying debunks my idea of a flat Earth, so I'm going to come with the argument and obfuscate it. That's wisdom, right, Lemon?
Indeed, sir, indeed. Flat
with a gold belt buckle.
Ho, ho, ho.
Can't logic, can't reason, can't deduce, can't science.
Come on. But he can travel all over the world in an instant and deliver presents to all the children.
Well, that's what you normie guys are for, to help bring down the crazy a little bit. And I thank you guys for helping me with that. Thank you.
But Santa must be
I
real.
wasn't saying you were crazy.
Santa must be real, because can you imagine how many people would be in on it? Gosh.
This conspiracy.
That would mean that almost every parent would have to be in on it.
Can you picture a group of kids sitting around and going, why would they lie? Do you know how many parents would have to be in on this huge Santa conspiracy?
Right. They're just sitting around.
Who would we analogize?
One of them's like, I'm trying to expose the truth. I saw it myself.
Yeah,
like, I don't want to hear your anecdotal story.
I was kind of on the flat Earth side of that argument when I was a kid. I was trying to convince my friend that Santa was real, and his parents wouldn't tell him about Santa.
Grim, who would you analogize? What analogy would you make to the little kids? Who would be the little kids in this flat Earth arena?
Santa believers.
Well,
the Globers saying why would
Santa
they lie?
believers would be flat Earthers.
Obviously,
the Globers
the
are the
black holers.
The Globers are the ones saying why would they lie? Do you know how many people would have to be in on it? Just like the little kids with the Santa.
Yeah.
Why would they lie?
The funny thing about you and black
less people have to be in on it, actually.
The funny thing about you and black holes is that I don't know many people who say, yeah, absolutely, it's a black hole. It's sort of like, yeah, okay.
Oh no, it's predicted by Einstein's theory. There should be black holes everywhere, and wormholes too.
No, they just think it's part of the model, Moyak.
I don't give a fuck, Jeremy, about why they would lie. When there's no lie regarding what I'm talking about, then it doesn't matter. You have made a really bad analogy.
I agree with Curve, but I do know a lot of people ask that
Germany
question.
made a bad
But
analogy.
I personally never found that question
when he said you can rely on
for that
Curve.
reason. Jesus Christ.
Sorry, I gotta go. And
Dude, I'm just gonna mute you if you keep doing that, man. You keep your mic open and you just talk over everybody, man. Stop doing that.
Okay.
And notice I haven't muted you yet, Grum. So I don't want to hear a bunch of whiny shit about that.
You, Curve. Kosho's talking.
Then shut the fuck up and don't respond. Don't respond to tell me you're not trying to respond to me. You're doing the very thing you're saying you're trying not to do. You can't help yourself.
You just won't shut the fuck up, will you? I'm not saying anything. Shut up.
You just
go
work.
ahead, Kosho.
He's projecting onto you, Curve.
And
Don't
there
fall.
he goes.
I'm projecting. Okay, go ahead, Curve. Shoot away.
So you get the point, Jeremy. I'm not concerned with why would they lie when there's no lie with regard to the shape of the earth anyway. I don't even get my fucking information from them who you say is lying. Dumb fuck.
All right, I'm sorry, Kosho. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought. I was just saying
Yeah,
the same thing.
this
Kurt
wasn't
was
about-
saying. I've been saying that for a long time, and that's why I never asked that question. Is because it's there's other instances where it's like the old saying, like a million Frenchmen can't be wrong, or something like that.
Right. Or,
well, I mean, Curved, yes, you
right.
have been lied to. I mean, there is no way you...
By you.
What?
By you.
No.
Is
You're
that one
either
of those
lying to
instances
yourself
where I've interrupted
or,
again?
Something is wrong here, because no single person can prove the globe on their own, you see. And all the information you've been given has been given by other parties. In fact, you today, if you were never told you were on a board today, up until this day, and someone said it's flying through, you would never believe that. You would say, no chance.
Bullshit, his name is Curved. Right.
No, I'm saying today, if he found out today that someone suggested that the Earth is a ball, when he sees the sun go over his head, all this stuff, he would never say, oh yeah,
no, it would make
I believe
sense to him
in
right
that
away.
globe. He would
And
say,
they provided the same evidence? I believe in a second.
It would make sense to me right away, dude. If this evidence was provided to me, even if it's been a flat Earth for a million years in my mind, and then someone showed me this particular evidence, I would be like, oh.
Just look at sunrise and sunset and just have, some
Rockets
grasp of the size of the earth. You're done, Chemo.
Sunrise and sunsets, you have to do an experiment to explain the observed phenomenon.
I'm not playing that fucking game with you.
That's the only way
know
you're
you're
going to know it,
cooked.
and
That's
what
why
I'm
you go to
talking
this
about.
stupid game.
You're not going to know it any other way, are you?
Admittedly, it might
Unless you
take me a
test it.
while to get it.
Yeah?
We can know things without you agreeing that we know them.
Not
Chemo.
an
How about
observed
that?
phenomenon, you can't.
No, you can't.
Anything else, yes. An observed phenomenon that is questionable, you need an experiment.
Well, no, phenomenon doesn't mean it's unanswerable. It just means it's
I didn't say it's
uneasy to
unanswerable. I said
explain.
it's questionable. You have questions about what's going on there, and if you come up with a hypothesis, you would test it.
Well, philosophically,
not just
everything is a
assume that
phenomenon.
something's happening because I say so. That's what science is, and that's the only method you're going to know something. Okay? So you can come up with...
No, not okay. You shouldn't have ended that with okay, because no, not okay. We do not need to be scientific to know things, and certainly not your cockamamie fucking idea of what is science.
I didn't say you need it for everything. You need it for your observed phenomenon, because that's the point of it, is what's going on there. How is that happening? And the only way you're going to know and realize this is with an
You say
experiment.
anything about gravity, man?
Not through your scientific method, Chemo. I'm not limited by you.
Yeah, your method has failed you, because the horizon's not physical. You can't measure to that location. The sun
That's
is not
stupid
really
in and of
at
itself.
the... What?
I said that's stupid in and of itself.
The sun is not
horizon
really
not
at the
physical.
horizon.
That's stupid, K-Man.
The sun is not really at the
It
horizon.
is stupid.
And again, me
I
saying
agree.
this and
Just
you
wanted to
saying
say
that,
it.
the only way we're going to know is with an experiment. Which is what
That
we
is
have.
not
Why
true.
am I still here? God, gotta go.
So that's the problem that you guys have, is that you assume So annoying, this assumption, assume. Let me just look at something and take a guess at what I think is going on. Right? That's not normal.
Chemo, it's the heart of their pseudoscience. You can't take that away from them, though.
That's not normal. That's what we.
I'm not using science.
Yeah, you can't guess your way through life and say, "Well,
We know you're not using science."
Not for what I'm doing. Not for what I'm concerned with. I don't need to wear the label.
You just said
chemo
sunset and
approved
sunrise.
science. Jeremy the fuckwit approved science. I don't need that.
Go on, Jeremy. Find
What
out
do
then
you
how
mean?
he knows the sun is going down the ball.
I mean, this thing Chemo's talking about, this natural observed phenomena, that's the heart of the scientific method right there. That's the beginning.
I know, but curve is
You say
Step
the scientific method as if there is only one.
There's no,
There
there's
is.
there's multiple methods, but they all have the same critical part: natural observed phenomena, hypothesis, experiment. If you don't have that,
That's wrong.
And
if you don't have that,
if it
you
claims
don't
to
have
be
that, you're doing.
science, and
If
if
you
it
don't
claims
have
to be
that, go
We
on.
understand your point, Jeremy. Here's the point you don't understand. There is only one that is referred to as the scientific method by a lot of people in general.
And if it does not
But
conform, and if it does not conform to that method, it
And
is
if it
stated as
does not conform
pseudoscience.
to that, it can still be science. You did not need to interrupt me
Science.
to introduce that fucking derp, you mong.
You're wrong,
If it
Kurt.
does not-
You're so wrong.
If it does
It's
not
unbelievable.
concord with the scientific method, it is
Now,
called
you're talking over the
pseudoscience.
retard, Chemo. Stop it.
Not only one scientific method. That's what Curve just said. You can hear many scientists say this, that there's not only one scientific method, and the backbone of the scientific method may appear to be the things that you just named, Jeremy, but it's not only it's not as precise as that. It could be anything that you can test, anything that you can test and thoroughly to make sure that it's to make sure that you've not been fooled into thinking that something
No,
is true.
to
that
make
it's not
sure,
true.
Kosho, it
Yes.
agrees with hypothesis. If experiment doesn't agree with hypothesis, then it's wrong. Simple as that. So you predict
Experimentation is step 4 of the scientific method.
You predict,
Yeah, from what you
Kosho.
learned from what you learned in school. But like I told you, I can find you quotes from scientists who said exactly or something along the lines of what I just said. That as long as you can test, if you can test something thoroughly enough to make sure that something that is not true, or to make something to test to make sure that something is true, to make sure that it's not true. I'm saying it wrong, but either way, yeah.
Again, so listen, it has to agree. Hold on a second.
You guys wouldn't interrupt me. It'd be much easier to say things like this, but you guys are cutting off every single thing I say.
Well, I just want your opinion on the agree part. When Feynman says if it disagrees with hypothesis, experiment, it's wrong. And you've said none of that. You've just said,
if it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. And what did I just say?
You just said thoroughly.
If you test something to make sure thoroughly enough to make sure that something that you didn't make sure that something that is not true is true, and either way, you get what I'm saying. As long as you're thoroughly testing it enough, that's the same thing as experimenting, Chemo. If it doesn't agree with the test,
what does that mean?
then it's not true.
Then what's the results? How are you gonna get the result?
How are you gonna get the result?
Because you're gonna have an experiment, right?
You're gonna test it.
Yeah, but again, this is the scientific method. This is not science, then, yeah?
Oh, this is science. This is the actual backbone.
This is not what Feynman is saying.
Describing.
Yeah, this is not what Feynman said, because you need to have an experiment. Your hypothesis needs to agree with experiment.
And what he said was, if it doesn't agree with experiment, it's wrong.
So you need an experiment. Where's your experiment?
Right. That would be the test that I just described. The test.
Your experiment. What is an experiment?
Maybe the experiment could be wrong too.
But these pseudoscientists that you're quoting of, they would call their pseudoscience science. And this is what Chemo's trying to elucidate for you guys, is that if there is no experimentation to back up the hypothesis, you have not completed the scientific method, and therefore you are not doing science.
Kosho, you keep saying thoroughly.
You test your idea to make sure that something that you didn't make something to be true that's not true. Okay.
But we're talking about science. If you keep on saying thoroughly and test. Yeah. We're talking about hypothesis and experiment.
Right. So you would test your hypothesis, and what would you call that? An experiment, right?
So what is your hypothesis? Your predicted cause, yeah?
I mean, it's whatever your idea of whatever is happening, whatever you're testing, whatever your test is going to be based around. There's going to be some idea that you're going to test to make sure it's true, to make sure you're not fooling yourself into thinking something that's not true is true. That's the whole point of experimentation, is isolating it to the point to where you can, thoroughly make sure that the thing that you think is happening is happening. And you make it rigid by saying, "Oh, this is step number 4. You can do step 2 and 3 first." It doesn't have to be in the order. It doesn't have to be exactly the way that you're describing it.
But you're conflating that because for an experiment you need a cause and an effect.
Not all science is done through experiment.
You're indicating that you can have just an effect and then observe the effect. And you don't have to
understand
indicate
that not all science is done through experiment. Yes or no, please?
No, that's the definition. The definition says
all science is not done through experiment. Yes or no?
We talk about the scientific method.
Yes or no?
We talk about the scientific method.
Okay, so Chemo's not going to answer. Would someone else like to answer?
Do you agree that pseudoscience falls under that banner of science that you're talking about?
No.
What's the definition of pseudoscience?
If you look up the definition of pseudoscience, it is that it did not conform with the scientific method. So if it doesn't conform with this very simplistic method, it falls into another category of pseudoscience.
Read that definition. And then look for how you've twisted it.
Yeah, you got the definition wrong, Solar.
Where's the definition?
Easy to find. How come you have to look up definitions?
Oh, pseudoscience you posted. Yeah, that's what you have, a collection of beliefs regarded based on scientific method. It's not based on science. You guys are not basing your science on the scientific method. That's the point.
Mistakenly regarded as being based on scientific
exactly.
Method. So, again, Chemo, since you won't answer the question, maybe you should let someone else answer the question. Does anyone else want to answer the question? Is it possible for things that are science to not be only experiment? Yes or no?
No, you've got it in the definition that you just posted.
Dude, answer his question.
Clearly you can do things that are science that are not based on experimentation. So like you weigh or make direct observations, there's no experiment involved with making direct observations, but that's part of the scientific method. It is science.
No. Again, that's the mistake.
Your point is refuted, Chemo. You're wrong.
So you have the belief, that your practice is regarded as being scientific method, but you haven't done an experiment. So that's pseudoscience. So you have a belief that I just observe and I can make a guess and just do that without the experiment. So this is your belief, and you practice this without your method, or the scientific method. And you think it's part of the scientific method, but it's not.
You're coming up with a conclusion, then that conclusion needs to be tested to make sure that it's not untrue. But that's not the only. Making science is not only about making conclusions.
Now, again, that's part of the pseudoscience. It means you have a belief, you believe something, and you think, oh yeah, I'm doing it part of the scientific method.
Why should we take the word of someone who's never passed a science class?
So, Kimo, where is your experiment for the dome and ice wall?
The dome is not an observed phenomenon.
Where's the experiment?
It doesn't need one because we don't observe a dome.
It's the necessary antecedent to gas pressure.
How about the ice wall? Where's the experiment for an ice wall?
You haven't done any experiments.
An ice wall wouldn't need... Pyro, listen to what's happening. Is it questionable when you look at the ice wall?
No, but where's your experiment that an ice wall exists?
No, but again, if you saw an ice wall, would it be questionable? What would your question be?
Your pseudoscience came up by your own definition, which I don't agree with.
What would the question be, Pyro? You saw the ice wall. Okay, so what?
But how do you know it's an ice wall?
I said if you saw one, What would be the science behind it? Experiment.
I don't know. You tell me.
There would be none, because there's no word phenomenon here. No phenomena. You're just seeing an ice wall. But if you see the sun, that looks like it's going over curvature.
Well, what is your experiment? You're claiming it will be pseudoscience.
Pseudoscience. Chemo pseudoscience.
Where's your observation of the ice wall? If you want to say it's not science,
I
okay.
I don't know why he's not. He's not
Is there
claiming
something wrong with
everything
you
is
people?
science, man. Like he's saying simply by saying something, he's not claiming that that's science.
I'm not saying he's saying it's science. I
I
said,
know,
where's
but
his
that's,
observation?
that's what's being asked of him, and it's not going to go anywhere.
So chemo's ice wall is
So
you know that.
definition.
Do you guys understand that you're grouping pseudoscience and science together under an umbrella term of saying it's scientific?
No,
because
we're not.
I did 2 steps out of 5. If I was building a house and it required 5 steps, and I skipped step 4 and step 5, I don't have a house.
Right,
I
but
have
you
something
think that
that's the
science is
equivalent
the
to a
end
house,
product,
but I can
but
argue
actually
until I'm blue in the
science is
face that I have a
process.
house. But
Yeah,
Science
if you
is
don't have the
required
roof
process.
on, if you don't put the roof on, the back wall, and you say, look, I've got the floor and the front wall, this is my house. Like, not a house, that's not a house. What are you talking about? You're like, it is a house. Because I have one wall and a floor. Well, where's the rest of it? You see?
Yeah, and that's
That
where
that
your
would be a
analogy is
pseudo-house.
mistaken. Science
That
is
would be
not
a
a
pseudo-house.
house. It is not a tangible thing that has requirements. It's a process of validating knowledge and inference.
No, that's
So it's not just
measurement and
one aspect
calculation.
at the end of a
So
train of action.
do you think calculation is scientific? And do you think
Can I get a
that
question in here?
doing basic things
Sure,
like
Scott, go after
technology,
Lola.
do you think technology is scientific? Or do you think that there's
It's
this
a malformed question. Technology is based on scientific understanding. Go ahead, Mackie.
Can I get a question in here? For all you people who think that saying what isn't science, who do you think defined what science is? Chemo? Any idea who defined what science is?
Through trial and error. We're looking for a method.
No. I didn't say how. I said who.
Oh, it would have been for the longest time, forever, because there would have been a method to know something. If someone sees something that's questionable, to know this.
So in your mind, the scientific method just has always existed, kind of like the number 1, right? It's just
no,
out
because
there. Nobody
this
ever defined the
branch,
scientific method.
no, but this branch of conducting science would have emerged, say, in the late 1700s or early 1800s, and it would have been formed around the basis of experimentation. If I can do an experiment and I can prove
I know, and I'm not asking what, I'm asking who. So there was a group of men.
A branch of science. So the entire branch,
at some
foundational
point in history, there was a group of men who came. It was because it was mostly men, right? It wasn't women, but it was mostly men who came together and said, "We're going to start doing this thing this way," right?
Okay, but do you understand that you're asking?
I understand
the same thing with
don't
geology. The same thing with geology. You would be in disbelief that some men looked at a rock and wanted to understand the nature of a rock and start to do carbon dating.
I like the way how you avoid the actual question.
No, I'm drawing the analogy that the question is malformed.
No, it's not an analogy. It's a complete avoidance of the question.
Yeah.
It's a complete avoidance of the question because you don't want to know. You don't want to say the answer. I know how your mind works.
What do you think the answer could be?
It was created by men.
We do not disagree with that at all. And so was
like
this entire subject.
Didn't say
the
that.
subject of science was built on a foundational premise centered around experimentation. So that's why science became what we know as science.
Can you learn?
In the same way that geology...
That is historically incorrect. That is not what had happened. Now, maybe you need that to be what happened for your narrative, but that's not what actually happened.
Okay, what do you think actually happened? Maybe you can explain how a scientific method, meaning like the method for this faculty, how it was somehow erroneously added on top of it sometime in the not so recent past.
You could
How
also
do you
look
see
it
this?
up yourself.
Mind if I read something to you?
No reading.
I'm gonna go ahead and read this.
Don't read, man. Come on. Just post
There's
it.
this misconception that there's a single scientific method that all scientists follow. The correction is that the scientific method is often taught in science courses as a simple way to understand the basics of scientific testing. In fact, the scientific method represents how scientists usually write up the results of their studies, but it is a grossly oversimplified representation of how scientists generally build knowledge.
Okay, so
Is there anything else for you?
I look now who invented the scientific method. It says Sir Francis Bacon. The scientific method can be applied to almost all fields of study.
Okay, now respond to what I just said
Logical,
to you.
rational problem solving.
Respond to
in
what I just said to you.
1561. No, because what you've effectively gone to one of the pseudoscientists who is now attempting to try
Wait.
disprove.
What made Bacon the official scientist, and everybody else pseudoscientist?
No, he's
What does that?
recorded as being the first to define the scientific method.
Excellent.
Okay.
Singular.
So, do you hear what you're saying, though? You're saying
There's your
because
answer,
someone
though,
wrote
Scott.
that
What's the
down
problem?
and you chose to believe it, that makes it true.
Well, you can test it,
Oh,
can't
this-
Do
you?
you understand what that says about the way you think?
The oldest reference
No,
is
you
always the
don't.
best.
No, but Scott, you're not
problem I've got with
understanding. The reason why this was given was because it was tested, and it was known that this would give you a result. And that's what they tried to separate.
Empirical.
Wait,
But there's an
you're saying they
important thing.
tested they tested the idea that testing's the best way to find things?
Well, when you
No,
think
Scott,
about like
there's a
religion or
problem of
God or
understanding
something
here
like
with
that.
Francis
Hold on a
Bacon.
second, Russ.
If-
So when they think
go on.
about, hold on a second. So when we think about religion, they would have said, right, we want to know if it's spiritual, a miracle. Is it like you would want to know? Is it a miracle or not? If it's a phenomenon, and if you can test it, if you can't test it, then obviously it goes into that realm of it's not testable. See? So this seemed to work if there was a phenomenon, something that was questionable, and yeah, it works.
And it's a singular method with a independent variable, your control variables, and your dependent variable. It's a very simple thing that you set up a null, you set up a control group. So it is a very specific method, as Chemo stated, built up
Why are you
over
saying that in the
time
face of what I
through
just said to you?
experimentation.
No, because remember back then there were miracle workers who were making claims.
It is a method.
I've got a bit of a problem with how people are presenting. All Francis Bacon did, because he was a philosopher, and what he basically did was realize that there was a fundamental problem in how we substantiate something. When we talk about religion and faith,
I've just said this, Driss.
Not really, no. You said something that wasn't quite on point. That was the area that they decided was beyond, testability. So everything within the natural world is everything physical and everything that we can measure and everything we can touch, whether it's a car, a tree, a rock, a plane, a piece of water, whatever. We can interact with it in some way, shape, or form, or we can observe it in some way, shape, or form. So
Yeah, you've just repeated what I've just said, Driss. And Scott was asking the flat earthers, how do we understand where the method came from? And for me, it's what
That's
I've
not
just
what
said.
I asked, though.
It's
And
what
the fact that you can't even repeat the question back says a lot about the way you think.
You said
I've just told you clearly what we've been saying the whole time, that it's not an actual it's not a single scientific method. It's a thing taught in schools.
Kosho, look, listen.
To simply express it to kids.
Let me ask you though, Kosho. All right, let me ask you though. If there's, because we're talking about phenomenon. So if someone makes a claim they saw a ghost or saw a spirit or God did it, how would you test this? How would you separate science and knowing, religion? How would we know that to be true?
Does it have any physical impact?
I'm asking
upon the
Kosho.
world?
Kosho, can you just explain? Because I'm trying to say, could you do it mathematically? How would you test if the phenomenon of
isolate the phenomenon and isolate everything else from it, and test it rigorously to make sure that what you're claiming to be true is actually what's true?
How?
And
What method are you going to do? Give me the method. Tell me what you're going to do.
a single method. Every case is unique.
So what method would you do? You see, if someone says they see a spirit,
has the ability to come up with his own test.
So to get it peer reviewed, do you think you would need?
That's the whole point.
So for peer review, do you think it would warrant using a scientific method?
For peer review, it would warrant you writing out what you did, so that people can
in whichever, like you say,
study and see what you've done. This is exactly what I
But
just
if-
read. What I just read
But if
says
it changes every time,
just read to you
then
says
you
the
couldn't
scientific
send it in for
method
peer
is-
review.
Yeah, what I just read to
It
you.
has to be a specific
What I just read to you
individual
guys,
method.
won't stop interrupting the answer I'm trying to give to you, is that the scientific method was written out. I mean, is
Post it so I can read it.
yeah, and then stop fucking talking when I'm reading it. It says, in fact, the scientific method represents how scientists usually write up the results of their studies. Okay, that means that's how they write it up for other people so they can read it, but they don't have to write it in a single way. It's just it's like a framework.
Basically, as long as you're giving them enough information for the other party to repeat your observation, your test, and your measurements in the same methodology that you employed to validate that the outcome was consistent with the method, then you're good. That's your golden.
So I can't see how you're even arguing this point, because again, if someone makes
This
a
is
claim about
ridiculous.
God or anything, you would want to know how they test it and how to separate it from a religious idea to actual knowledge. So
No, but it's
Great
more
question.
ludicrous.
How did you
It's like
test your God?
it's like saying a surgeon is not the method of surgery. So the fact that a method gets taught in a faculty that is defined like surgery, how to cut the human body, it is done in a specific method. Science has a method, and that's
No,
what
it doesn't.
was the entire
does not.
foundation.
You're
Look at the
just wrong.
definition.
Surgery
You're
doesn't
just
have a method
wrong.
either. But this
You're
is
just
the
wrong.
this
No,
is the
no, your
illogical
analogy's wrong.
claim you're making.
You're just wrong.
Yeah, I
No, it's
posted the
not.
definition
You're
of
just wrong
science for you to
again.
read. Please
Did
read
you
it.
post
It's a
it?
process. It's not one thing. It's not the end of
Can
the
you
process.
post
It's
it?
the entire process. Yes.
Okay, there I saw it. All right.
It's
Where's
an umbrella
this
term
from?
for the entire process.
But where's this? Looks like you typed it out in your notepad.
So
So Solar, have you ever done science? I mean,
Hold on.
officially.
I didn't type anything out. I copied and pasted a photo from a Google search.
Yeah, what I
also
find odd is
reviewed
that
the
people, I'm pretty
Wikipedia
sure, who've
page.
never done science in their life claim to have had an idea what people who do science do on a regular basis. And you don't seem to have any idea what people who do science actually do when they get up in the morning and before they go to bed at night.
that's because they're not
What
scientists.
do zoologists do? What do chemists do? What do biologists do? I mean, it seems to me you want to say if it isn't physics, it's not science, and it's only physics if you do it this way, which is
That's what
so silly. 'Cause
That's
there's huge
exactly what
swathes
it
of
is,
chemistry.
Scott, because if you try and claim there's a spiritual thing that we can't test, then that's going to be like a religious idea.
Oh no, we
Didn't
can
say that.
test religious ideas. You can test religious ideas, Kimo. That's not a problem. As long as they have a physical impact on the world around us. That's the bit of it we can look at and test.
But this is also not a spiritual idea.
But this is the part that Kosho missed in his own citation. It says, in fact, the scientific method. Hold on, let's just change now. In fact, the scientific method represents how scientists usually write up the results of their studies.
That's exactly that's
which
the one
means
sentence I just read
it's
to you.
always intrinsically applied back to the study. And if the study shows you how you need to go through experimentation, if you don't get to the experimentation phase, you haven't done science.
That's not true. The method specifically says that you can do experimentation or observation or any other method that will test for
Observation is step one.
No,
You have to
observation
do
is quite often
to
step
prove.
4.
No, to prove. So, like they say,
No,
here,
that's
they
not
have
true.
to write it back up.
This is
So
Kosho's
if they have
paper
to
that
write
you
it
did.
back up in a
if you were to look-
specific method, and then they just skip out 2 or 3 steps in that
If you were to
method,
actually
they haven't
read,
completed the method.
if you actually to read a handful of versions of this, you'll see that almost all of them will say something like, step 4-ish will be perform an experiment or an observation in order to test your hypothesis, and it will put a disjunctive clause in there. Yes, absolutely true.
That is absurd. That's absolutely absurd.
It's a fact, and I've shown it to you before, Jeremy, but you didn't read it.
Pseudoscience. That's a fact of
You're
pseudoscience.
insane, dude. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about.
That is a fact of pseudoscience.
No, you just don't know what you're talking about.
So either I need to rigorously test or either not. And then
Well, let me ask you, anything that you do in the test your hypothesis is valid. So you have to rigorously test the hypothesis. Now you can do that with observations sometimes, and that's okay.
Well, it says you can't test anything with an observation.
A hypothesis test is called an experiment.
It's not true, Jeremy. You're just dead wrong.
It is an experiment, but you're dead wrong.
I've got a very simple example. Very simple example. We want to study whether salmon go back to the same spot they spawned from. So what we do is we're going to tag a whole load of salmon. Yeah, and we're going to monitor those salmon, and we're going to monitor their return back into the shallows. Yeah, and then we can say, okay, they are definitely coming back to this location. What independent variable have I manipulated to confirm that?
What was your observed phenomenon?
So,
my observed phenomenon that salmon seem to come back to the same point to spawn.
What caused that?
Well, exactly. That's a good question. But what I'm doing is I'm confirming the observation is
no.
true.
You're finding out what
without a cause, you haven't got a hypothesis.
Before I take the next step, so I can just do the observation. Because what I might be concerned of is the population declining or is the population?
That's not science.
No, that's a separate. That's
not
separate
science. That's a different thing.
And that can be done
your question
through
is
the
why.
same set of observations.
We're telling you it's not science. We asked you what is your observed phenomenon, and you said the fish moving. So what caused that?
No, I didn't say
it doesn't matter. Hold on a second. Are you guys claiming
magnetic fields? And then you would have to go and construct an experiment.
Wait a minute.
Fields and see if
what
you
if,
can cause
what
the
if,
fish
what
to
if the
swim.
only question we
What if we don't prove?
Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
You would be conducting science.
That would only be if we're trying to investigate how do fish come back to their source or something like that. But if all that we're asking is what we're just answering the question about nature, whether fish go back, salmon go back to their spawning point every year. That's the only question we're asking. The mechanism doesn't matter, and that's still a scientific question.
No, that's not science, Jay.
Just like if we ask the question, do people get cancer? You could do a study on that. Regardless of what the mechanism of cancer is, we can determine whether people do or do not get cancer, right? Just by doing observation, we could study that and answer that scientific question, whether human beings get cancer. Maybe we want to find out, well, do dogs get cancer the way human beings get cancer? Can we study whether cancer occurs in dogs?
Let me address your point. You would only be doing science when you start addressing the question with a why. Why did that occur?
No.
And then you go to see if you start a question with do fish go back to their thing? It's a yes or no. That's not a cause.
What is the definition of science? It's simply to learn about the natural world, right? To study and investigate the natural world. That's all science is. And what you're claiming is that, well, unless you're asking a why question, then you're not doing science. If we're just learning about the migratory pattern of birds, which is one that Jim Panda likes to use, that's not asking a why question.
Why would
that's not a why question. That's just we're trying to learn more about the natural world. That's just learning about the natural world.
Jake,
that's
all you're doing is making.
He's so caught up with the quantum.
Hold on, Zanik. Jake, all you're doing is making a measurement. You're not doing any tests.
I just have one final thing to ask. I have one final thing to ask, and I'm out of here. One final question. I just have one final question for Flat Earth Solar, and then I'm out of here. Okay. My one question is: do you think that you can learn things about the world that are useful without the scientific method? And have you done that in your life?
I would say yes. Natural sciences is the study of the natural world. Normally, it starts with a question.
Okay,
it's not.
Let's not go into
repeat. That. No, it's not a repeat.
So you just said that
thing. It's logical. If you want to know,
you just said you were able to learn useful things about the world. You just said you were able to learn useful things about the world without using the scientific method. Yes, that's what you said, correct?
But subjectively, I couldn't make it objective that it's a fact to all people unless I could follow a method and tell them to follow that said method. And when they then tested it for themselves, they could make that observation.
Okay. What if you say? Okay. What if you say that
you've made the observation that I don't forget what city you live in, but let's say I make the observation and say there are I don't know if there's blue jays in South Africa, but you make the observation, you make the claim, okay, I just saw a blue jay in my window. There are blue jays in South Africa.
Jake, stop being silly now. We've told you what you have to do.
Where is the scientific method and the experiment and manipulating the variable and all that in that test?
So that's not a scientific test. And this is the point that we're trying to explain to you guys, is that effectively observations, wonderful. They're called correlations. Correlation is not causation.
They're not called correlations.
Causation is the cause of
They're not called correlations. That's just
which is a why question.
No,
why did the water boil?
You got to quantify in there. How and why are both science. There's no distinction between the two.
Just silly.
Like how much?
How and why.
No, you're being
and
silly,
if.
Beach. This is
as well as R. As well as R.
Hold on. In Jake's
you
example.
don't understand the fact.
There's no order.
You don't
We've lost order.
have a.
In
you don't
Jake's
have to
example,
have the scientific method. Jake, I'll just correct Jake for a second.
Don't
Anytime
don't
analyzing,
second,
hold
man.
on.
I'm trying to say something.
Jake needs correcting on this one, though. He really does.
He's out of control. Lost control.
Wrong about one thing. Well, Jake's wrong about just one small thing.
So,
the fact that the scientific method, no matter how you do it, can be the scientific method. So when you ask them have you done things that did not use the scientific method that was science, that's really kind of a strange question, because the different ways you do science can be the scientific method. All of them are scientific methods.
Could you use non-surgery? Could you use non-surgical methods and still conduct surgery?
No, dude. Why would you ask a question like that? Listen, I've been trying to say this
Shows
one
he doesn't
thing.
understand.
That's a good one.
Shows he doesn't understand.
I like that.
I don't need to follow up.
How about medical? How about can you do non-technical methods?
That was a ridiculous question to answer. There's no need to.
Coach, I'll pile on to that one. Can you do non-technical methods to practice medicine?
Please stop for a second.
Wait.
So I can say this before.
Further
from this.
Coach, a quick point.
There's one point that he'll leave.
Fucking link.
Coach, can I make a quick point?
Yeah, and the fucking link that I've posted before that said the misconception about the scientific method also says the misconception is that experiments are a necessary part of the scientific method process, and you can fucking read it yourself. I posted it in the chat already, and it's saying the same thing. These are misconceptions about science.
Coach,
do you agree that experimentation is in the scientific?
He mentioned surgery.
Do you agree?
That's his flawed
one
logic.
of the possible ways of doing
it. Can you do medicine? Can you practice medicine without technical operations? That'd be something that's more analogous.
Stick to the topic, science, right? How are we going to get knowledge? What method?
Science.
What method are you following?
Yeah, just talk over me. That's great. That's how you have a conversation. Just keep on talking over
again,
people.
you just go off into somewhere else.
No,
we're talking about science.
No, and you and 4 other people. I mean, come on.
Quit quarreling, you two.
So look, we're looking for knowledge.
Look, you don't need to know the causation of the cause.
Right, so let me give an example.
The scientific method can take many shapes and forms. It's not rigid as quantum racer and therefore solar now thinks it is.
Right, let me give an example.
Therefore, it's logical.
Hold on, Simon, a second. Let me give this example. So Curve says that the sun disappears over the horizon. So this is in nature. How are we going to go about knowing if it's going over the curve or going away from you? Scientifically.
You take measurements.
That's not scientifically.
Yes, that is. Absolutely.
Taking measurements.
Experimentation takes measurements.
Well, go on, I'm listening.
For example, I measure the sun. I'm on top of a mountain, for example, over the ocean, overlooking the ocean.
And hold on, Xanax. Sorry, one last point. One last point. One last point, Xanax. Just hold on. Xanax, I'm going to let you finish. Just 1 second. I just want to say,
no 1 second.
Xanax, come on, quickly.
I think it's okay to step over somebody.
Xanax, just so we can get a response from you, we're just going to say, let Solar respond to you when you've given your method. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
The
you
method
interrupted to say that? Come on.
The observations. Repeated observations that then can be correlated. We're not saying that correlation substantiates causation. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that the scientific method can take many shapes and forms. And if you want to do something like a measurement, that can be science, like the horizon, like the sun setting on top of a mountain, measuring the horizon drop, plotting the path of the sun. How long does it take? What shapes does the sun take as it moves?
Let him finish.
Finish the sentence, and you keep on jumping in.
It's me saying we don't need all the details, Zanuck. I'm just saying speed it up.
Yeah, because we want to hear Solar's response in detail.
Measuring the horizon drop, measuring the size of the sun, measuring where it is, and versus time. Those are all measurements that can validate my hypothesis.
Okay, so how are we gonna? Is there a test or anything in this?
I just gave you it.
What was the experiment?
So
I just took see this Beach. That's why I explain it, because no one listens.
It didn't help.
If I could just,
it's not going to make any difference whether you do say it or don't say it. It's like Kim was going to just say stuff like that.
All right, Solar, you respond to this then.
Solar, logical.
Let's let Solar respond though. He went 30 seconds.
Right. Let Solar do it.
The point that we're trying to make here is that if I sent a little retard down to the highway to go sit down with a piece of paper and write down how many cars he counted, it would have no bearing on science. If he counted 10 red cars and 50 blue cars and 30, there would observation.
It depends on the hypothesis, Solar.
Unless it's guided, and a hypothesis
exactly.
test is
it's got to have a hypothesis.
No, it's not.
A hypothesis test is an experiment.
Just not. I just posted like 5 different posts saying that it was an experiment.
So once you start to conduct the observations, once you agreed that you went down and started conducting your observations and taking measurements, that would be after you've already established a hypothesis, which would be the cause. So now you're going to go and make observations to determine what is the cause of the thing that you're now observing. Because if you're just going to observe how many cars drive on the highway, there's nothing scientific about that observation. If you wanted to now find what was the reason that so many cars came through at a specific time, then you could start to manipulate variables and figure out why the traffic was the way it was.
If I wanted to, can I make a comment?
No, Solar. Hold on, Solar. Solar, did you say traffic in your site? That's not science, Solar.
Show. If you're hosting it, you got to let other people engage.
That's chemo. Come on.
I just want to ask
ridiculous. Come on. Let me respond to Solar real quick.
Let me
give him an example.
Okay, you carry on, Zanuck, and
I'll go away.
If you're done after this, you got one more that you're done. Then
Thank you. So if you wanted to use the cars on the freeway, what would be a hypothesis? Let's say we're talking about measuring temperature around this freeway and want to say if it's due to the cars or to something else. Well, then you would do that test and measure temperatures and see the number of cars that drive by. Maybe you do some carbon monoxide measurements or carbon dioxide measurements along the way. That's how you do science. Then you can determine where the heat that you measured in that area, the temperature rise, is due to the car flow and not birds flying by. I mean, that's science. That's a typical.
I agree. You'd be asking what is the cause of the temperature increase in the road, and then you would be conducting scientific experiments to validate that hypothesis. So, but going back a step, Kimo was right. This is not science because it's not a natural observation. Cars are not a natural thing.
That's ridiculous.
If we were,
but guys,
if we were maybe observing a migratory pattern of geese or something, that would be more
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. You guys don't know what the word natural means. You should look up the original definition of the word natural, and you'll see that what they meant was anything that was not in the realm of spiritual. Not spiritual is what they meant. Because the word when you said the word natural as not man-made didn't start happening until like 1880. So hold on, I'm talking, man.
We're doing that thing again.
Mackie, I'm tired. I'd like to have my turn. Thank you very much. You're going to do this in about 30 minutes anyway, so I don't know why you're going to start judging it. Look, there's something that you guys should think about, which is that if you think about the biggest scientific discoveries of the 20th century, probably number one on most people's number one list is going to be discovery of DNA, and that's not an experiment. That's an observation. That is literally there's no experiment done. It's literally a technique with which they were able to finally observe that it's a double helix. And everybody puts it on the list of number one. And in this case, everyone matters because that's a definitional issue. It's what do people think is definite science? That's what people think is science, and that's what it is.
Beach, this is the problem, okay? So the very definition of what you've just said, the definition says a collection of beliefs, practices regarded mistakenly as being based on scientific method. Now, you've just given us none of the scientific method. So we have to put what you've just said under pseudoscience.
Any philosophy that puts Watson and Crick's discovery of DNA in pseudoscience is so absurd on the face of it, it's not even worth considering.
But again, just look at the definition. It's there for you to see.
The point I really wanted to make, because I've been very patient.
You'd call that you'd call that.
I would really like to make my point, sir.
Sure.
So
I'm just saying what he was saying.
You can see we're in the middle of something, Russ.
And
I've
not
given
science.
Mike 4 times in a row, and I would really like to make my point. Thank you. So the problem I've got is you seem to be saying that if we find an independent variable, then that is absolutely the cause. Whereas my understanding of science is we invoke what we to be the probable cause. This is why we don't end up with a proof in science, but a theory. Would you like to expand on that?
Science absolutely proves things. And that's why you find an independent cause which you manipulate, thereby creating the cause of the effect that you were trying to determine in the first place, thus proving your hypothesis to be true and disproving your null hypothesis, which would have been the opposite of what you had initially thought of as your cause
to the effect, yeah.
of the effect.
And can you show me that? Can you show me that definitively in any documentation from science? Because every time that I look at a science book, where they talk about the probable cause and they talk about the set of information that we have at hand, but we always have to respect the fact that the actual answer can be in the set of data that we do not know, i.e. something we've missed and something we've not tested. Therefore, this is why we stick to the concept of theory, because all theories in science are open to revision based on new data. Is that not how we work?
Damn,
It is, you're right. But the probable cause is the future. So you're thinking about what could probably cause this thing to occur. Then you're creating a hypothesis. Then you're testing your hypothesis through experimentation. And at that point, it is no longer probably the cause. You have either proven it or disproven that it is the cause.
You got to take this.
And it is that simple.
He's spitting in your face, Chemo. He has not ruled out all unknown variables.
Right, and you really are.
No, we don't make up variables, Curved.
Completely confused.
Independent implies standalone. Independent implies standing alone. So it is a standalone variable causing the desired effect. If the situation has more than one variable and you cannot control all the variables, then you won't be able to isolate the independent variable.
Well, I'll give you a simple example, a very, very quick, simple example. So Sleeping Warrior did his density test with an egg, and he said that the cause was him adding salt to the water, which was making a density change to the water, making his egg float. So I asked him one very, very simple, direct question. How do you know it's not the fact that you've changed the electrolytic properties of the water and it's not the density of the water that's being done here? So how did you rule that independent variable out through experimentation? And he admitted that he didn't. So what we can say is with the salt in the water, he has a probable cause, but not the cause. Because you can never take into account everything you don't know.
Incorrect.
This is why we have theories.
Incorrect. If you're saying there's
so you take into account everything you don't know. Wicked.
If you're saying there was an extra cause, another variable, then you would have to show that variable to exist and then manipulate that variable to show that it's either doing the effect, causing the effect, or not. Can't just make up things and say, well,
that flies in the face of your claims about Cavendish and vacuum and all that shit, Chemo. Make up your mind.
I agree. I agree with that question. There are often hidden underlying variables that could be identified.
Like what?
And I agree with Chemo saying that you would then need to test that further. If you think this has got to do with electroconductivity of the fluid, you could manipulate the electroconductivity of the fluid and see if you could create that same upward-downward motion that was observed when adding
without
salt.
changing the density.
Instead of using salt, you could use another substance which is potentially less electro.
That doesn't have that effect on the water, and we can demonstrate that through a second experiment that will then say, "Aha, this is good." And then
precisely.
But you're making a good point there, Solar. Solar, can I make a comment? A quick comment. So the independent variable is just one that has an effect on the dependent variable. You can have multiple experiments. So that's an interesting proposition, and Foolish talked about that. You basically say, is this egg responding to electrostatics or something else besides the density? And you would set up separate experiments and only change those independent variables of those experiments. There can be multiple experiments, multiple independent variables, as long as you keep all the other control variables constant. Does that make sense?
I agree, and especially once I saw Zachary Zabala's demonstrations where he applies an electric current to an object suspended by helium balloons, and when he applies the current, it would actually cause the helium balloons to descend back down towards the Earth.
Yeah.
Then when he reversed the current, he could get it to raise. So he demonstrated that through just applying keeping the medium necessarily the same, and now applying a current, you could also get some sense of movement.
If you
hold on a second. Now, if you now remove those currents and all that, and then only change the density in another experiment, the egg does move. So it shows that that wasn't the current.
It's still density. Because
no,
in that specific,
one's density, the other one's electric current or magnetism. You have two different experiments.
The only variable manipulated in the Sleeping Warrior experiment was the density, and that was provably able to demonstrate a motion.
Go with the experiment, Solar. Post it. Let's have a look at it.
You can make the egg move in a number of ways.
Balloon.
All you're trying to understand is why the egg's moving. So you have different tests to understand how you can make the egg move. I can make it move by pushing down on it with my finger. That doesn't discount whether the density is the cause or not. It's a different experiment, a different hypothesis. Of course, if I was doing it, Kim, one more second. If I was doing my hypothesis didn't have anything to do with the finger, why would I put the finger in there to push the egg down? Because that would be changing the control variable, i.e., I don't want any fingers pushing on this thing or other forces. So you've got to understand what you're actually doing. Your experiments have to be controlled.
Yeah, I mean, again, I need to see this experiment and how this was. And this would have to be with all objects, not just a balloon. So you'd have to show other objects can change direction with this. But I still think it's density, relative density. Let's have a look at this video.
The thing that's absurd about you guys' position on science is that it's based on, derived from absolutely nothing. It's derived from just random speculation or what QE tells you. And every scientist in the world, all the departments of science, all the awards of science and publications and journals of science, all the books on science, they all contradict you, and yet you somehow think that you have the better of it, the right of it. That makes no sense.
Well, I mean, it was brought about to separate the religious aspects and actual knowledge. So if someone claims of a miracle, a phenomenon or something like this, they see a ghost, we need to know what caused this thing in effect, and that's the only way we can separate if it's actual or just a belief. That's why we must follow this method. Otherwise, we'll just go back to the religious world of people saying, well, I guess, I think this is what it could be, and that's the problem we're in now. Got that video, Solar? That balloon one, can you find it?
I'm on his channel. I remember what the picture looked like, and I'm not seeing it, so I'm not sure if it was struck.
I've got these things. But, you know, like I say, whatever you suppose the variable is, say anything you want, but you've got to be able to manipulate that variable, show cause. To show, cause to the effect. Otherwise, we can just say God did it. May as well just say God did it, because if there's no test, whatever we like.
No, Chemo. Do you understand? You know what the null hypothesis means?
I've posted one in the chat.
Yeah, what we predicted to be.
I was in the middle of a sentence. Started talking to Chemo. Chemo.
Yeah,
do you understand the null hypothesis?
Yeah, so
Chemo.
It gave us no result. Yes, no result. What we were looking for.
What is the null result? What does the null hypothesis mean?
I've just told you. So what we thought was
no result's not an answer. That's not an answer.
Yeah, so you're testing for what you think it was, and you got no results.
No, that's not what it means.
That's what it is, yeah.
No, that's not how it works. For example, if we want to say that the density is the cause of these objects rising or falling, the relative density, and we do some tests and we say, oh yeah, this looks like the experiments are going to prove my hypothesis correct. But then I put this thing in a drop container and I drop it, and I have a video camera in there, and suddenly these objects that were previously moving because of relative density don't. So therefore, if you thought it was density, relative density, I've proved it wrong by dropping this container and imparting acceleration to all these objects, including the medium. So that proves a null hypothesis, meaning it's not the relative density. Do you understand?
Okay.
Do you understand? Yes or no? I know you laugh, but I want to know if you understand.
You said the same thing I just said.
It's not the same thing. You guys are still confused with the cause of the cause. That's where, and that comes from QE. You think that this independent variable is the presumed cause of the whole thing that you're trying to deal with. It's not. It's only experiment
I just told
specific.
you it's not the cause. So you predict that it's something, and then it turns out it's not that.
No. It's specific to the experiment. That's what I was getting at. I wasn't being pedantic. I was being specific.
Specific.
I can say my sunburn is caused by the temperature of the air. Because every time it's hot out, I'm out in the sun and I get sunburn.
So you're
How do
just
you
trying
prove
to
that it's not?
disprove what you think it is.
What's that?
You're trying to disprove what you think.
Right. Like I said, you create a different experiment that still involves that particular presumed cause, and it shows that it's not the presumed cause by a different experiment. You have to make a different experiment to show that it proves a null hypothesis.
Okay, so what's your point?
I'm trying to have you understand that the independent variable is not the overall cause in this hypothesis. It's not the cause. That's wrong. Solar is incorrect, and so is QE and many others.
No, but that's what we're looking for. Is the cause to the effect?
Right. There's two causes. Remember, there's a cause and there's a cause of the cause.
No.
Yes.
No. If I
yes.
if I change the density, then obviously I know that I caused the change, and the change in the experiment is what we're trying to get the effect of.
Okay, so you're the cause of the ball. Then since you changed things, you're the cause of this ball rising or falling.
Yeah, so
that's
we're
incorrect.
Exactly.
That's
So we're able to repeat. Exactly. We're able to repeat.
No, that's not the cause. You drop an apple. You're not the cause of the apple dropping.
No, we're the cause.
Like, why did an apple drop?
We're trying to repeat what we see in nature.
Do you want to? Do you look at this? Okay, let's nature mean not supernatural, as Veach mentioned earlier. An apple falls off the tree. Is it because the wind blew and caused it to fall, or did gravity cause it to fall?
That's what you have to find out.
They're two different experiments, two different hypotheses.
So you can put the apple tree in a room where
the wind doesn't blow.
Yeah. And then
and then it doesn't fall.
It fall.
When you say gravity, you're talking about space-time. When you say gravity, you're talking about space-time bending, right?
See, there we go. The cause of the cause again. We're not talking about that.
No, that's not the cause of the cause. What do you think? When you say gravity,
tree in the house,
clarify what you mean by when you say gravity.
You think it falls because the wind blows.
Clarify what you meant when.
You think it falls because the wind blows. True. If I don't blow, let's say in this particular experiment, if I don't shake the tree, the apple doesn't fall. So therefore, I've proved that shaking the tree is the reason the apple falls.
And if that tree's under the water, then that leaf will break off and float to the surface.
Right.
Antipodal to the gravitational bias, which should bring it down to the bottom.
No, because we have a buoyancy, which is opposite of the vector of gravity or its weight, because things around it weigh more. So they push it upward. See, you're so lost.
If a tree is in air, it'll drop down, and if a tree is in water, it'll
many
rise.
times. You just don't want to listen, so that's okay.
Then don't give up on your teaching career.
Dropping
You're
it,
so close.
or what causes it to accelerate? Think about that for a second.
Hey, didn't you just say that you didn't want to do this?
Can
So
you
just shut
clarify-
the fuck up for a while, please.
Can you clarify by what you meant when you said gravity, Zanuck? because you thought I was talking about the cause of the cause, but also I don't appreciate getting muted for no reason. Thank you.
You were interrupting Jeremy.
Interrupting what? You guys act
Interrupting
like every time
Xanax.
I'm doing something, every time I'm in a
Always
conversation
your
with
fault,
someone
Jeremy.
and 3 other flat earthers jump in, they don't get fucking muted.
Yeah, they're
Yes,
not
they do.
listening
You,
to
you
Jeremy.
guys don't know who gets muted.
Yeah, leave Jeremy alone. What's he doing? Trying to be involved?
He was interrupting.
Sometimes
I wasn't
Kimo, you
interrupting.
get
I was
muted
trying to
for
get.
doing that.
I was trying to
Sorry,
get Xanax
Jeremy,
to
mate.
clarify what he meant when he said gravity, because he assumed I was asking for the cause of a cause, but I just want to know what is gravity then, if he's not talking about space-time bending.
Yeah, bending of a.
Why not just the acceleration of an object towards mass?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out what's causing that. We're trying to figure out the cause of that.
Cool.
You can't just say that's the
we're-
cause.
No,
The cause
we-
is
we-
what's happening.
We've made an observation and we've given it a label. We label that observation gravity. Now we're looking for the cause of gravity, not the fact that we've defined what gravity is and therefore are trying to apply it to anything that we can. No, it's the other way
Right.
around. We make the observation and then we gave it a fucking label.
Gravity is to be the
So how-
cause. So it's not the label of some cause that you think else that there's another thing.
So what did Newton
Gravity is
postulate?
said to be the cause.
Yeah, what did Newton postulate as the cause of gravity? Or did he just describe the effect?
Well, he also said that it's ludicrous and that it should never be attached to him. That spooky action at a distance would make no sense to any man with a competent faculty of thinking.
But did he describe the cause or did he describe the effect? You pivoted away from my question to say something irrelevant.
So it is the effect, but it's also the cause.
Did he describe
see
it? Did he describe the cause or did he
call
just
it
describe the effect and admit that he was limited to describing the effect in the Principia?
So he saw the effect and then he tried to deduce a cause, and he thought of it as mass and spooky action at a distance, and no one really took it seriously except our 20th century. And it was already superseded by Newton in the early 1900s.
Why are you talking about that spooky action at a distance?
Because he's mixed up between quantum physics and...
Thank you, Druff.
I know, it's really weird.
What the fuck, man? So dumb fuck. Why are you bringing up spooky action at a distance?
Because he's confused.
Oh,
What do you think? What do you think gravity is?
Why are you calling it spooky action at a distance with respect to Einstein and Einstein's thoughts?
Does it matter
Statement.
who said it?
It's a direct quote.
But it's
moron.
All right.
Direct
What
quote.
What quote, cunt?
Tell him go. Just like hammered with it.
Anything for a
No,
small win.
this cocky fuck him.
Wasn't
He's
talking
a
about
clever
gravity.
guy. He knows his
He
stuff.
obfuscates and he's so fucking evasive.
He was
He
talking about
deserves
quantum
this.
entanglement. You numbnut.
You're a stupid moron, Platter Solar. If you weren't so goddamn dishonest, it wouldn't be so bad.
The more competent we are, the more you despise us.
It's like you just
That is
disagree with
not true,
everything
Kimo.
says.
You are totally incompetent, and I hate you the most.
Exactly. That means I have obviously then, like, well, let's not blow around.
Exactly.
But you are.
But he just said the opposite of what you just said, Kimo.
Fantastic people who are bringing you the truth.
Kimo does that. It's okay.
It's so funny.
It is.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, Platter Solar, quit doing that. It just makes you look bad, man.
This is nothing they've said. They haven't said to any other flat earther solar. All the best flat earthers get attacked like this.
I was using it as a description because it is a mysterious force at a distance, and we used to think it was due to the mass, and now we know that it's the displacement or the uneven displacement of mass causing a deflection in some conceptual medium.
So you would definitely say that to have any form of gravity under our model requires large amounts of energy or mass, yeah?
To have?
One is a necessary precursor to have a gravity field.
an imagination.
No. I'm saying that you require, under our model, I'm not saying that you agree with this, not saying that it's real, but under how we understand gravity today, the best explanations that we have, you require either a lot of mass or a lot of energy to create a significant gravitational field.
So we're talking about Narnia and about some distortion in Narnia. Gravitational fields.
If you don't want to answer the question, Solar, just say I don't really want to answer the question. I'm fine with it, and I'll move on.
No,
I'm not going to pin you down. I could have pinned you down on spooky action at a distance, but I chose not to.
But it's a fiction. You're asking me to play along with your fairy tale and then tell you what I think.
In the story of Narnia, when we describe gravity, does it require in Narnia, i.e., the way we describe it, either large amounts of mass or energy to create a significant gravitational field? Why are you dodging this question? What do you think I'm going to get out of it?
I believe in magnetic fields. I've seen magnetic fields being demonstrated.
What's your fear here of answering this question?
No, it's a ludicrous question.
Man, he's saying in our model, the model that's described to you that they teach you.
I'm asking you to do an internal critique of my world, not an external critique from yours. Come into my world a second, look at our model, and is what I'm saying to you. I'm trying to make sure that from my perspective, from what your understanding of my view, that we're on the same page. That's all I'm trying to do here, mate.
Well, from the fictitious version, it's either got to do with a significantly large proportion of mass that would somehow create an attractive force towards other masses around it, but then that was subsequently superseded by the uneven distribution of mass causing the bending of space-time and thereby introducing orbits due to the apparent density of these different objects being attracted on this said fabric, which seems to be quite flat or linear, and then the distortions seem to dent downwards on a certain plane. So I do understand what was taught as the said reasons for these things, but they're occurring on such immense distances. If you consider even just the distances between the planets in our solar system, or as we're told that they are. So it really is it's quite a ludicrous conception that the moons of planets aren't then realigning and starting to orbit the sun directly, because if the sun's gravitational field is so significantly large that it can hold Pluto in orbit, then all the smaller moons, Pluto is like a moon-sized planet, all the smaller moons that would occur much closer on the inner planets would then be attracted away once they reach a certain point in their orbit. And that's been demonstrated. So they call that the three-body problem. When you have the sun, a large planet, and an orbiting satellite, then with those three opposing gravities, eventually the satellite is always stripped away from the planet and it's called the three-body problem.
That's not the three-body problem. The three-body
in
problem
mathematics, they've never proven
the problem in mathematics where they're trying to explain perturbations in a three-body orbital system, which they cannot do in linear calculations, but you can do in a matrix calculation. So it is a solved problem.
It's a problem with three bodies, and we've got a heck of a lot more than three bodies. So the crux of what I'm trying to
we can do 10 or 12 bodies quite happily now. That's not a problem.
All right, I'm done playing in Narnia. Was that adequate to answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, basically, yeah, I think it's all fiction, but yeah, basically that's what I think. Basically that, yeah, I kind of agree with that. I would have done. I don't know why you're being so careful. You seem to think that I'm just going to try and do some gotcha. I was just trying to make sure that we're basically on the same page. That's all I wanted to do. And because you took so long to do that, I have no idea what the follow-up point I wanted to make was. So I'll let someone carry on. But I don't try and look very, very simply. I don't try and do gotchas. I will hold your feet to the fire.
Oh
I'm
my
a
gosh.
language and medium pedant, but someone else carry on.
Hey, Solar, you're in the south. What about this Southern Star stuff that they talk about? Have you seen it? What information can you give us on the stars rotating in the opposite, supposedly direction?
Good question. I've never seen Sigma Octantis. Apparently, I'm not far south enough to be able to see it.
Holy fuck.
My stars seem to rotate clockwise fashion.
Hey, Mr. Solar, can you do everybody a favor in here? At least a personal favor to me. When you ask a question, you're responding. Can you just make it either brief or quick? Because you answer very simple questions with a lot of words, taking a long time. So there's a lot of people in here. So just try to. It helps if you keep it short.
Okay, it sounded like someone wanted a different opinion from a southern hemisphere, but I'm done with my explanation. If
Yeah,
that
go on. Give us
answered
the details. Don't worry about that. Go on.
Whereabouts are you in the southern hemisphere?
They're going to ask you questions about it. Hopefully.
Johannesburg, South Africa.
So you've never seen the Southern Point, Southern Star, or whatever it is?
No, but every single night I see the Southern Cross. And the Southern Cross just seems to rotate like a clock according to the year. It's sort of pointing towards the southern area, but the Southern Cross is in our sky 365. So the moment that I knew that this Earth is meant to be pointing in two opposite directions on 180 plus days apart on the two different sides of the season, and we should be seeing completely different stars, yet you see these same stars. But like I say, I'm not far south enough to actually see Sigma Octantis. I've seen a lot of those, what do you call them? Those long videos where effectively you don't ever see a star, you just see a zone that the others are moving around.
Star trails, time lapse.
That's it, thank you.
Where did you get the idea, the utterly retarded fucking idea that you're not far south enough to see Sigma Octantis?
Just from my observations from where I am.
Do you know it's basically not a naked eye visible star?
Yeah, and I've also got mountains in the area where that south region is. So I do have it a bit cut off.
What's your approximate latitude?
I think we're at about
range. Don't dox yourself.
Yeah, about 25 to 30, I would say.
All right, so it would be about 25 to 30 degrees above your astronomical horizon.
But where's that?
No, because I'm 20 to 30 degrees from the equator.
Which would put the southern celestial pole at about 25 to 30 degrees above your astronomical horizon. You're far south enough to see it. If you live next to a mountain and it acts like a wall blocking your view of it, that's a different story. It's not your location that you're not far south enough. Get south of the equator, you have a view of the southern celestial pole.
With the telescope, not the naked eye.
The pole, not the star.
The star, yes.
I don't give a rat's ass about the fucking star.
Well, that was what he said. He's never seen the star.
Use the telescope, use time lapse, whatever. But the star is not the issue. It's the center point of the rotation.
And if you can see the cross and you can see the pointers, you can draw out their intersection.
I'll look into that. There's a couple of good viewing spots. One of my friends who had a good telescope, he's just recently gone overseas. So, but I'll try and. It is an interesting thing. I've seen it demonstrated with magnetic fields. You get two counter-rotating poles.
What?
So there are other phenomenon that can create. And even what we think is a counter-rotation, the stars are still effectively rising in the east and setting in the west. It's just depending on whether you're facing south or north, whether it appears to come from your right or your left. So we're
That doesn't
all
work.
staring.
When you look
same
north, it doesn't rotate in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere.
If you face north and you watch, your stars would rise on your right hand side and then move towards the left, and then if you turn now south, they would now move the opposite of what you just said. So it's just about the position of where you're facing.
No, not really. On a magnet, when
clockwise
you
or
look
anti-clockwise.
towards one pole, you see one clockwise direction. When you look to the opposite, you see the opposite clockwise direction.
I think you're
His
saying the
stars are
same
gonna
thing.
rotate clockwise.
No, I don't think we are.
His
He's saying
stars
you see them go left to right.
looking south. But what you don't seem to have an answer for, Mr. Flatter Solar, is that when looking south, these stars that are moving east to west, you will see moving right to left in your field of view. About half of the sky is doing that for you as you look at the South Celestial Pole. Stars moving from, say, 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock clockwise. They're moving right to left. That's counter to the east-west only motion that you guys are fantasizing about with your spinning dome above a flat Earth.
No, because here in the south, ours rise at the 9 o'clock instead of the 3 o'clock.
I didn't say anything about rising now, did I? Are you hard of hearing?
You know, you said they were moving from the 3 o'clock to the 9 o'clock, and I'm just correcting you to the 3.
You didn't correct me on a goddamn thing. I'm going to say it again. About half of the sky is moving right to left for you when you're facing south. I said, for example, stars moving 3 to 9, 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to 9. That's right to left,
If I'm
dude.
facing
Right to
north.
left.
Only if I'm facing north. If I'm facing
If you're
south,
facing
it's moving
south,
left to
the stars that are below the southern celestial pole, in their orientation about the pole, they will move in a down and to the left, and then still to the left, and moving back upwards from 6 to 9 in an arc.
in the north, perhaps.
In the south. Have you ever looked south outside? Why do I know more about what your fucking sky looks like than you do, genius?
Because it's pseudoscience. Observations aren't science, according to him. Remember?
It's moving.
I don't give a fuck about it.
It's moving in a circle. So some of it has to be moving. The top of the circle has to be moving in one direction, left to right, and the bottom has to be moving right to left, right? Solar.
There, Biodil posted a video of it.
Is moving east. This is what he's trying to assume that he knows more about my sky.
Nobody denies that.
Everything moves east to west. More.
No, that's false. Take a look at my video. Take a look at my video. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about the top half. The top half of the celestial pole, all the stars here, the top half will be moving left to right the way that you're looking. And then the bottom half is going to be moving right to left, because you get this because you have a circle. So you have some things with your orientation, what you're looking at, you're going to have some things moving in one direction, you'll have some things moving in another direction. Just like if you look at the left half, things are going from down to up. And if you look at the right half, they're going from up to down. This is how a circle works, a pole. This is happening in the southern hemisphere. That's what's being talked about.
So if you watch that video that you've just posted, everything is, if you were, say, looking from the horizon on the left-hand side, it rises at the left and it sets on the right, or it would...
If you're looking from where you're looking from in this video, if you're not looking from anywhere else, the view that you have in this video, you're looking at a circle. The top half of the circle is moving from left to right. The bottom half of the circle is moving from right to left, right?
All right, but I'm not talking about the stars that are...
Hold on. You said all right. Are we agreed on that? now?
It's circular, yes. So I will agree to that.
Well, not just that
But
it's
what I'm-
circular, not just that it's circular, that the top half of the circle moves left to right and the bottom half moves right to left. Are we agreed on that?
That's obvious, but the previous guy
Right.
was.
Well, why have you been arguing against it for the last 5
was
minutes?
telling me the stars rise at the 3 o'clock position, and then
We're
set
not.
at 9
You
o'clock.
mentioned rising,
I
and
was
the
telling
stars,
him that
and the
wrong,
stars,
and
the
I
stars don't do that. You do not start. The sky does not get dark, and it's empty, and it gradually populates with stars rising from the east. That doesn't happen.
in a clockwise
It gets
fashion.
dark and it's full of stars, and we see a motion of those stars. So
In a
just
clockwise
parroting
That was
quantum
my only
erasers
point.
catchphrases aren't going to do you any good because they're incorrect.
What catchphrase did I parrot? I was simply talking about a clockwise rotation.
That they all rise in the east and set in the west. It's a standard quantum eraser thing.
Okay, so typically, like the word rise would be the upper arc and not the lower arc. So the upper arc, yes, does appear to rise in the east and set in the west, but then it does at certain locations, wherever this was taken, the celestial pole video, where you're able to actually see the bottom stars, but from certain latitudes, that would be obscured by the land, and you would only see the top arc of those stars rising in a clockwise fashion from the left to the right. But now if I turned and faced north, they would be rising on the right and setting on the left. And that's obvious. By simply turning around, I would experience the exact opposite. One would be rising on the right to the left, and if I face south, it'll be rising on the left to the right in terms of the upper half of that.
Problem with what you're saying is it doesn't work that way, man. It doesn't work. You're talking about two different parts of the sky.
Yo, why are you guys muting flat earthers when two flat earthers try to get in the same conversation, but you're letting 5, 6, 7, 8 globers get in the same conversation?
It's hard to know who to mute, but regardless though, Jeremy.
Sorry, that was my fault. I muted him, but I was muted myself.
No, I'm taught they've been doing it to me on a regular basis, Jem.
Jeremy, I'm trying to say something to you though. The best bet, because I know you're pretty good at it. Sometimes me and you talk at the same time, and one of us will give way to the other one. And more people need to do that.
No, it ain't about
not persistently.
It ain't about over talking it. If I wait for an opening and then try to get in, I'm getting muted for just trying to get in the conversation, man. What the fuck?
I know, man. I'm trying to say how to deal with that. Everybody has to stop interjecting as much as possible. And if you find yourself interjecting, somebody has to give way.
Yeah, but you could at least tell him or give him a reason.
Well, that was
I don't
my
interject
fault.
a
Sorry.
lot. It ain't like
I was
interject a lot or
giving
talk.
him a reason as I was speaking, but of course no one could hear me speaking because I was muted.
I interject a lot or talk when I do talk. I don't talk for a long time. Like I don't monologue on like you guys. I get my shit out and I'm out.
Jeremy,
right.
Thanks for that question, Kimo, because you got us really sidetracked on the South Celestial Pole. Jeepers.
Yeah, I mean, this is what it's all about, is asking the questions, is getting people thinking and just working these things out. Yeah, I knew that would be...
That's a big deal though, man.
I knew it would be a big one, yeah, because he's in the South.
Because it's inexplicable on a flat Earth, I think. I can't see how you can have two poles, and yet you do.
You have to understand it to understand what the issue is, but even what you're stating back to us is not really conceptualizing what we're saying. It's not about it's not about turning around and viewing it from two different ways. It's about viewing two different parts of the sky. So both the two parts of the sky are rotating other directions. It's as if you're on a merry-go-round and you're viewing it one way, and then you're standing upside down, or you're upside down on that same merry-go-round and rotating. You're going to go counterclockwise in one perspective and clockwise in the other. But there's no other way to do that. You're not going to experience that just by turning around.
That's the model, yeah.
And the argument that Solar made right at the start, which was that he thinks that on a globe he shouldn't be able to see the same stars all year. But when it comes to these circumpolar stars, that would be true of a flat Earth, wouldn't it?
Well,
I think.
you've got the again. We don't know how the sky works.
It's certainly not a conclusion you could draw about a globe, that it isn't a globe because there are two poles.
No. Again, we don't know if they're two exact poles.
Globes have two poles.
But we don't know their exact position, do we?
Yes.
Never seen these stars. He's in the south.
I have.
No, but back then, you probably didn't know what you were looking at then.
I did.
Yeah, but if you're not, he wasn't looking into flat Earth then, right?
No, but I know what the Southern Cross looks like.
Yeah. Even Solar admitted that he sees it every night.
Oh, you do see it. I thought you said the mountains.
My dad made a point of showing me these things so that I could see that there was a difference. So when I was 7, I knew what the Big Dipper was.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I knew what Orion was at a young age as well. My grandpa, he was into astronomy, and then I would always look at Orion's belt like almost every day.
When we emigrated to New Zealand, my dad had a sort of bucket list of things that we had to do in case we didn't come back to England. Like he took us to London to see things in, the Tower of London and stuff like that. And my mum took us on this picnic down the fields. There was a whole load of things that went on.
Did you go fuck around with the Swiss guards? You call not the Swiss guards? What are they called? The guys in front of the palace?
Yes, they call the people in London Swiss guards.
Well, guess what, you fucker? The Swiss guards are in the fucking
In the Vatican.
City.
Yeah.
So
in London, they're the beef eaters.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Peters.
And the Grenadiers. Speaking of guards, we've got every state house in the United
Has
States.
Chemo been to visit Buckingham Palace?
We've got every
Chemo,
state
have you?
house in the United States under the control of the
I have not.
military, and nobody's talking about it. Nothing's going on.
Yep.
Everything's just fine. But every state house in the United States has been
You just
seized
said that,
by the
David.
military and is surrounded by military
You
forces.
just said that,
Can
man.
you please explain that?
You know, it's funny. You
David,
said
if
nobody's
no one's-
talking about that. And I was giving this chick a ride last night, and I was to be honest with you, I was trying to get her number, but she was on the phone with her mom the whole time, and she was actually freaking out about that. She was freaking out about she's not going to work on Wednesday or whatever, because she thinks that like every